and link projects together to represent scheduling dependencies. Also, stakeholders are important because we can select who should be notified of project changes and communications and who the portfolio manager should contact about a problem. Right now I'm concerned about the severity of the budget overrun, which I can see in the financial section. I can quickly see I'm 6% over budget or $500,000. Next, I want to see if the project manager has communicated how this happened and what he plans to do to correct it. So we'll scroll back up to the comments section. In this case, he has. He could also use this to request extra budget for the project, and the portfolio manager could grant the request simply by editing the budget data. This comment section provides an excellent place for all project-related communication to be recorded and cataloged. Rather than worry about several email chains, all project communication then is stored in one place, meaning a new project member can quickly get caught up on the history of a project. By using Focal Point, governments can quickly generate real-time overviews that encourage accountability both internally and externally. It also enables decision-making in terms of aligning your portfolio with your strategic objectives and making real-time decisions regarding troubled projects. I've demonstrated how Focal Point manages ongoing projects and investments. I'll now demonstrate how Focal Point can be used to prioritize pipeline projects and investments and rank the projects based on their aggregate value. In this example, the elements in the middle of the screen are pipeline projects that have completed business cases and are now ready for prioritization. I've leveraged business case data into the budgeted expenses and the NPV criteria located in the upper right corner. I've also included a number of subjective criteria such as public popularity, which can be assessed using a pairwise comparison. Using the scoring from each criterion, I can make a decision about which potential projects are the best candidates for launch based on current budget constraints. From that point, I can use the Gantt chart to schedule my projects based on dependencies and resource bottlenecks. Now, traditionally, prioritizations of projects have had two criteria, usually budget or NPV. And these numbers are easy to get because they're objective, and I've visualized those here in the diagram. Now you'll notice that the budgeted expenses, which is the yellow bar, is on the left. Focal Point divides up the criteria into positive and negative criteria. Negative are things that we want to minimize, so in this case we want less expensive projects, so you can see that's on the left. The NPV on the right is because that's something we want to maximize. Now you'll notice this pair of triangles sort of pinching the bar. What that represents then is the net score, and they're sorted based on that net score. Now the trouble with the traditional prioritization is that it doesn't include some more subjective criteria, and using Focal Point we can really mix subjective and objective criteria together to get a much more integrated view of what's valuable. So I'll include some of those now. I'll include risk. That's going to register as a negative criteria, something we want to minimize. But I'll also include some positive. We would let the mayor, for instance, have a say, or some stakeholders associated with the mayor's vision or the mayor's priorities. And then we've discussed the citizen-centered prioritization, which is why I've included public popularity here. Now, the width of this bar could derive from several sources. We might have some people with their finger on the pulse of what the people want. We might even bring in some focus groups or even do some polling. But no matter how we do that, we can incorporate that opinion in the prioritization. So the projects, of course, that are popular with the public then will get a boost, and the net score for those projects will be higher than something that's not as popular with the public. I also want to include one called strategic objectives. Now what we've done here is run each project through a series of prioritizations based on each strategic objective. So when I click and add this bar, the projects that have the most width here are the most strategically aligned based on those 5 objectives that you remember from the home page. So the result here is that we have a sorted list. From here we could also change the criteria scenarios where we weight certain criteria higher than others. In this case they're all equal, just for ease sake. But what this leaves us with is the idea that the Riverview Marina then is the most valuable project based on the aggregate score. It's got a very low risk, it has a pretty small budget, the mayor is on board with it, it has a an NPV that might not necessarily be competitive with the other projects, but it is, of course, in positive territory, very popular with the public, and something that seems to align with our strategic goals. The purpose of this diagram, obviously, is to determine which projects that we're going to launch. Now, the big constraint on that is how much money do we have. So I'll direct your attention on the budget expenses bar. We have a number here that represents $100 million. So what that means in this case is that if we were to do all the projects that we see here, we'd be looking at a total budget, project budget of $100 million over the life of these projects. Now, let's assume that we don't have that much money. What we'll be able to do then is start deselecting or descoping projects, and you'll obviously see the numbers fall as we do that. So since they're sorted already in terms of value, I know exactly where to start deselecting projects from the bottom. So let's have an example where I just deselect those last three. You can see already that I've slashed my budget, and now I only have 66% of that. So I've slashed that already by $34 million. I've also minimized my risk, or at the same time I've been trying to maximize those things that are important to me, such as mayor opinion, the NPV, public popularity, and strategic objectives. So I could continue to do this. What I would probably do next is from Focal Point I can then promote the projects that I've picked. So I might change the status of those projects to green light and maybe create some approved budgets for those. When I automatically change the status, the project managers for those projects will be notified via email about that. So my next step then is to find out how I'm going to schedule these new projects that I want to launch. So the way that I'll do that is actually go to the Gantt chart. So in this screen you can see the projects that have passed that first round, and now I want to know where to put them. Now the dates that you see here are the dates that have been added already from the project template or from the business case. Now those were done in a bit of a silo, so what I want to do now is of course treat all of the projects together. There are two other pieces of information I want to include. First of all, I want to see if I have prerequisite projects. Do I have some dependencies with ongoing projects or even with any new projects? And then the second thing I want to determine is, do I have resource constraints in any area? If I stack all these projects up at one time, am I going to have some bottlenecks that I'll have to deal with later on? So I'll add those to my diagram here.